neutral state rather than reconfigure the European balance of power. Although many Americans wanted their country to enter a new world organization to keep the peace after the armistice, they expected that armed force would rarely, if ever, have to be used once nations joined into a collective body. A world organization would mobilize public opinion more than armed force, preventing war from breaking out rather than waging war routinely against wrongdoers. In any case, the United States steered clear. With precious little dissent, it continued to abjure commitments to use force on the landmass of Europe and Asia and did not station its military there. By the middle of the 1940s, however, America's role in the world had fundamentally changed. We must relentlessly preserve our superiority on land and sea and in the air, President Harry S. Truman declared in 1945. Officials entered his administration determined to maintain a preponderance of power under the control of the United States. That objective would lead them to construe the Soviet Union as a threat and wage the Cold War in response. Nor did the desire for dominance go away after the Soviet Union fell in 1991. Instead of declaring victory and bringing its troops home, the United States persisted in its pursuit of dominance and in fact resolved to seek greater supremacy than ever before. How did the United States acquire the will to lead the world? We still do not know why, or even when, American officials and intellectuals first decided the United States ought to attain armed primacy, to become the supreme political and military power, holding itself responsible for enforcing world order. Worse, analysts have not squarely posed the question. Perhaps some think that U.S. dominance is justified, and thus unworthy of scrutiny that might unsettle the consensus favoring it. Others may simply fail to imagine the United States seeking any role, except chief arbiter of global affairs. Either way, politicians and experts have for decades heeded the call of publishing mogul Henry Luce in the 1941 essay that hailed the arrival of the American century. As Luce wrote then, "We can make a truly American internationalism something as natural to us in our time as the airplane or the radio." Luce's hope has been achieved. Americans ever since, from experts to ordinary citizens, have considered world dominance to be their nation's natural role, and they have identified dominance with the pursuit of international engagement and cooperation, even when it has produced violence and enmity. Even presidents not known for hawkishness or idealism have affirmed the point. As he negotiated arms control agreements with the Soviet Union, for example, President Gerald Ford paid tribute to the leadership role that has been thrust upon us by fate. "Circumstances, destiny, fate, or whatever you call it," he said, "the fact is the United States of America is today the world's best and perhaps its only hope of peace with freedom." This book calls U.S. global leadership what it was: a choice. Rather than deny that American leaders made a conscious decision to seek power, it locates and explains that decision in history. Instead of asking what took so long to summon the willingness to lead, it poses the properly historical question of why the United States opted to install itself as the world's armed superpower at all. The decision happened in the early years of World War II. 18 months before Japan's sneak attack on Pearl Harbor sent the United States into the war, it was another staggering event: the Nazi invasion and conquest of France in May and June of 1940, that caused U.S. officials and intellectuals to rethink the nature of international politics and America's place in it. As totalitarian